Today on CityCast Chicago. For the first time in over 200 years, two broods of cicadas are emerging simultaneously. And while we've covered all the cicada basics, our guest today is more concerned with how they taste. Yes, he shares a couple of his favorite cicada recipes. Anybody interested in some cicada sushi? It's Wednesday, May 15th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. We are joined by dining and drinking editor for New City Chicago, author David Hammond, a friend of the show. David, welcome back to CityCast.
Hey, great to see you again, Jacoby.
Man, we have talked about a lot of things on your visits to the show. Sweet steaks, best place to get a hot dog. You put me on some things like the Flamin' Saganaki. But today, we are here to talk about not only just the brood of cicadas that are on their way, but people who are out here eating cicadas, right? You got a reputation for trying some adventurous foods. Where do cicadas rank in terms of the sort of unique culinary ingredients for you?
Oh, I would say they rank high on the uniqueness scale. On the deliciousness scale, that's going to vary by the seasoning you put in there, because I tell you, insects, in my experience, and I haven't eaten a lot of them voluntarily, but yeah, cicadas and chapulines in Mexico, type of grasshopper, they don't come with a lot of inherent flavor, you know? I mean, a lot of the flavor from, say, a beef steak is from the fat in the steak. I mean, the oils convey flavor. Insects don't have a lot of fat on them, which it could be a plus because you get a lot of protein for very little fat, no cholesterol. But they don't bring a lot of flavor with them, which means that if you're preparing cicadas or any other insect and you want them to be delicious, you got to add some spice in there, something else in there, some flavor they can absorb, kind of like tofu. Tofu takes on whatever flavor you cook it with. Same thing with cicadas.
So obviously, like you said, you haven't eaten a ton of cicadas or insects, but when did you first become interested in eating cicadas, giving this a try? Obviously, you've written about foods not only native to Chicago, but across the world. So when did you first get exposure?
I mean, I remember seeing cicadas, the 17-year cicadas, when I was a kid, when I was a teenager. And then when they came back, when I was much older, I had posted on, I think it was Yelp, somebody had talked about cicadas. So I said, hey, you know, a friend and I, Kathy Lambrecht, are developing some recipes for seasonal cicadas. And Kathy and I had just talked about this very generally. I mean, it hadn't gotten to the point where we were writing stuff down or testing recipes. Within 24 hours, I was contacted by Good Morning America, Nippon Television, a German television station. They all wanted to come and get some footage of us eating cicadas. Because in countries like, well, Japan, actually, in Asia, they actually quite a few insects. In Germany, hardly any. I mean, in Western Europe and the Western world in general, European cultures, bugs don't rank very high on the edibility scale. In Latin America, in Africa, in Asia, in really warm, moist climates like Argentina, the Amazon and so on, people are going to be eating bugs there because there's a lot of bugs there, and they're a great protein source. They're significantly higher in protein pound for pound than beef is. But do you want to eat a quarter pound of cicadas to get your daily protein allotment? And that's the thing. I think there's a huge ick factor to overcome when you're dealing with eating insects.
The first and only time I tried a skewer, I was in, I want to say, probably Mendoza in Argentina. It's the only time that I had tried it. And it is not something that I necessarily been itching to try again, but I don't necessarily have terrible memories of it.
Yeah, and I think that here's kind of a fun fact. I can pretty much guarantee that every American has eaten at least 1 pound and probably 2 pounds or more of insects every year. The USDA, I was checking the food defects level handbook that the USDA puts out, and for wheat flour, they allow 75 or more insect fragments per 50 grams. 50 grams is less than 2 ounces, but it's more than 1.5 ounces. So that's a fair amount of bug parts in in flour. Now, and flour is not alone. I mean, there's loads of insect parts. I don't mean to disgust anyone. This is just reality.
No. People need to know what's going on.
They're kind of recognizing the inevitable, that it's really almost impossible to create a flour or cornmeal or applesauce or peanut butter without some insect parts in there. And so the FDA, recognizing that, creates permissible levels of how many insect parts you can have in like hundreds of different types of food. So we're eating that stuff all the time.
So obviously between the 17 to 13-year brood, this is something that only happens every couple centuries. I've only been alive for one 17-year brood. One, is there anything dangerous about eating cicadas? But also, right, not all cicadas are created equal. We got multiple broods. Some will be out longer than others. Some are older than others. What are your recommendations around eating cicadas in addition to addressing if there's any dangers?
When I go out hunting for cicadas, as I will in a couple of weeks, as soon as they get their butts up here.
What does hunting look like? You got special boots? You put on a special
no.
Like...
I dress up like a female cicada, and they just flock me. No, they emerge from the ground when the ground temperature is, I've heard 62 degrees, 65 degrees. It's somewhere above 60.
We're getting close.
We are.
Close.
When the ground gets that warm, the cicadas that have been living underground for 17 years, they were 17 years ago, their mom and dad got together, mom gets pregnant, she deposits the egg in a tree where it lives a little while, and then these little cicada babies called nymphs drop down to the ground, burrow into the ground, and then live off the tree. In the case of this brood 13, 17 years later, they start crawling out of the ground in the morning usually. So what I do is, ideally shortly after dawn, I mean, it has to be light enough. I can bring a flashlight, but I usually go in at the dawn's early light. The little cicadas the nymphs are coming out of the ground. They're little, they're small. They're probably no bigger than my thumbnail. They're kind of a beige color, and they're small. Now they will evolve or mutate, maybe is a better word for it, in a fairly rapid, maybe like a couple hours, couple of days. They molt out of their shells. They shed the little nymph shell, and they grow wings. They get bigger. They get darker. Their eyes get redder. I eat them when they're young. I don't like those big monster cicadas. I think that, and it's interesting. I've seen recipes for cicadas online, and frequently it seems like people are using the mature cicada, which doesn't really appeal to me. I mean, the little cicada, they're kind of like soft shell crabs, actually.
I mean, speaking of, is there a potential shellfish allergy? We're talking about burrowing out of their shell.
Yes. If you have a crustacean allergy, you're allergic to shrimps, oysters, lobster, I would stay away from cicadas or any insect with an exoskeleton.
Yeah, the New York Times called them the lobster of the tree.
Lobster of the trees, right. I've read through a couple of books and talked to some people at the Field Museum, and no one says you can't. Everyone said, yes, it's fine to eat cicadas. You can do that. There's nothing harmful in them. There's no toxins in them. Assuming they haven't been sprayed with insecticides on somebody's front lawn, they're free of toxins. And they do have, my wife made nori, when the Japanese film crew came here to shoot us, and we had some friends over just all eating cicadas. My wife made some nori rolls. And nori rolls, you probably had them. I mean, the rolls, like at a sushi place, have a seaweed paper, put down the rice, put down like a squirt of wasabi, lay in some steamed carrot and celery. And then we had a little row of fried cicadas. We did tempura fried cicadas, got some tempura batter, dipped the cicadas in there, and fried them. Now, before I fried them, though, I boiled them. And the reason
I was going to say, what's that prep process? Because you're talking about getting the freshest ones,
yes,
which I'm hearing means getting them younger for your preference. So from the moment you hunt them, get them off the tree, get them in your little bucket, what you doing when you go inside? Is this like a crawfish steam? How you taking care of them?
I boil them. I mean, if it's going to be a while before I actually am going to cook with them, I put them in the freezer. That slows them down, and they'll stay forever that way. Then I boil them doesn't take a long time, like maybe, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And the main reason I'm doing that is to cleanse off any dirt, for instance, any contaminants. Now, it's important to hunt for cicadas in areas that probably have not been fertilized or been treated with insecticide. So that means front lawns, that stuff, I don't even know if you can get it off the insect. That might be so embedded into
Yeah.
the internal system that you're just not going to get rid of that. However, it can wash off surface gunk. If you have any allergies to crustaceans, you shouldn't do this at all. We had a party. We had a cicada party. We invited a bunch of people. We're going to eat cicadas. Woohoo! Turned out there were only like 4 or 5 of us who actually would eat the cicadas. But a friend of mine made what was probably the most horrifying dessert I've ever seen. It was a lime jello mold. So it was kind of like a jello mold like that.
Mm-hmm.
And she had put mature cicadas in at various levels. So it looked kind of like a hive of cicadas. It was, there's a shock value in that, but I'm not eating that.
You said that they mature very fast.
Yeah.
Do the mature cicadas with wings, do they taste different? Like what is that difference for you that makes you want to get them when they're younger, less mature?
I am simply turned off by the ick factor with the big ones.
Right. It's just too big at that point.
There's some things that, like, my daughter taught in Thailand for a year, so my wife and I went to visit her one Christmas. And so I was walking along the streets of Bangkok, and I saw a guy selling insects. Southeast Asia has some serious insect life there. These were, beetles, water beetles that were like that. They were huge.
Look like a punchki.
like a big, dark, hard punchki. Insects that require a knife and fork to eat are not insects I'm going to eat. I'm more like, pop them in my mouth. Sure, I'll try that. Maybe put a little hot sauce on them. Sure, why not? But insects are not the sort of food that I, as a North American person, savor. If I had grown up with them, I am certain I would feel entirely different about it.
Early on, you mentioned that the taste, again, really comes down to the seasoning, the way that it's prepared.
Yeah.
So I imagine, right, that we can kind of do our own thing there. What is the way you like your cicadas prepared? Are you like a lemon pepper type person? Like, what seasonings are you using to sort of bring them up to flavor for you?
Well, in the nori rolls, they were great. And that was with wasabi, which is a really strong, horseradishy flavor. We had them, we noticed that the cicadas had the slight taste of peanut butter. They had like a nutty flavor. And that's based on just fried up the cicadas, ate them just like that. Yeah, like get a little peanut butter in there. So what we did was we made cicadas on endive leaves. We had put a little jelly on there and then a peanut tasting cicada on top. So you had like a peanut butter and jelly hors d'oeuvre. We also used like a goat cheese chèvre, put the cicada on there. And honestly, the cicada at that point becomes just another crunchy thing on there.
Mm-hmm.
So really, what you're tasting in the nori roll or the goat cheese or with the jelly is you're tasting the jelly, the goat cheese, and the wasabi in the nori roll.
And you're really just getting texture from the cicada.
It's a texture thing.
You got any recipes you're looking forward to trying this time around? Because again, this season don't come around every day, David. You got to maximize this time. What are you looking forward to?
We're going to be doing the nori rolls. My wife said when she was eating it, sometimes when you bite into it and you get a crunch, you can just convince yourself it's a piece of carrot.
Yeah.
And not a cicada. So that it's kind of camouflaged in a way. What I think I'm going to do is batter and tempura batter, but you can use any batter, fry them, and you just have to fry them for 20 seconds, something like that, and like a wok filled with a little bit of oil in there, fry them in there, and then put them on some paper towel, let the oil drain out, and then salt them and maybe put a little tahine, that Mexican seasoning it has chili in there and some sugar. Just sprinkle that over the top and put it on in a bowl as kind of like hors d'oeuvres. That'll separate the the omnivores from the no insects never crowd. And if I can make them delicious enough, given that basically they have the crunch and texture going for them, and that's it. If you could put a tasty enough seasoning on them, I think people might try.
And a nice dipping sauce.
Sure. Maybe like a salsa or something like that. Yeah, I think that would warm people up to the idea. We as North Americans, maybe more so even than in other countries like Europe and Africa and Asia, where you're living right next door to an entirely different country. Our taste, not just our taste, but this is true of of a lot of countries, our taste can be kind of parochial. That is, they can be kind of closed off. But I think by introducing cicadas to people as something to eat, we're expanding people's understanding of what edibility can be in other foods. So if people could get used to enjoying them, I think that would be a very good thing. I think it's going to be years before Americans are comfortable eating cicadas. But heck, I go to a little store in Oak Park. They're selling larvettes. It's little, like a toy store. Larvettes are like little caterpillars, and they're like kids' candy. So kids are.
I was like, I'm still eating gummy worms.
Yeah, right,
every
right,
week.
Right. Now, one place I would draw the line. I mean, speaking of things we would eat. I have slight arachnophobia, and the idea of eating a spider, I'm not going to do it.
I hear
mean,
you.
that's just. I hate to be closed-minded about that, but that's something that I feel like I got real strong psychological pressure against eating.
It's the phobias stand in the way in some of these, and so I think people understand. But also, you've given us some really casual ways to start the process. Again, connecting it to things we know, little hors d'oeuvres, little the small PB&Js you were talking about, frying it up and throwing it on with some goat cheese on a cracker. I mean, do you know of any Chicago restaurants that will be serving cicadas in the coming weeks?
I don't, and I think I've looked around on menus, and I'm pretty sure that it seems to me like it could be a cool thing to do. It's a novelty, like Malort. You know, it's like something that people consider not so awesome, but the bros will be pounding them down. I had 25. How many do you have? 12.
Catch up.
I think it would be kind of a fun thing to do. The problem, though, is that there's a relatively short window when they're out.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they could go out and find them and freeze them and reuse them later, but will restaurants really do that? I'm not sure. But it seems to me like during cicada season, it would be a fun little add-on. Hell, charge the customer, an extra $2-3 to have a cicada mounted on their glass. People are going to want to take pictures of that and put it up on Facebook and so on. And then maybe they eat the cicada, or maybe they don't. But if they fried it hard and maybe dust it with tahini or a little chili powder or something like that, I can't imagine. Well, I can't imagine how people would be grossed out by it. But it's such a small little quantity of insect.
Mm-hmm.
And as it's clearly deceased, I mean, it's fried, it's petrified. You don't have to worry about eating a living insect. Yeah, I think it would be a cool thing. Mm-hmm. I may actually recommend that to some restaurants. Why not? I mean, it's a zero cost ingredient. You just got to go out and fetch them, cook them. I mean, it's nothing.
Just go out with the bucket. I mean, between what you've said about the unique opportunities available for people during cicada season, but also the importance of thinking about alternative food sources moving forward, do you think Chicagoans should be eating more bugs in general, breaking this stigma down?
I think it would be, I'm not sure I would tell people that they should eat them, but I would say this: if more people ate bugs, we'd have a cleaner world. We would reduce carbon emissions. But that is such a leap from where we are now. I mean, I would be naive to say, yes, let's all eat bugs. And people aren't going to do that. Honestly, I'm not going to do that. I mean, I think as part of a regular diet, small quantities of insects could be worked into the diet, and then we'll get used to it, and then we'll be okay with it.
David, before we get out of here, for someone who has listened to this entire conversation sort of with their shoulders up against their neck, with sort of a
totally understandable,
a really, not riding with us face, just a really disgusted face, what's your last pitch for them? If not to try cicadas, to at least be a little bit less grossed out by them, because they're going to be everywhere soon. Maybe not all over the city of Chicago proper, but across Cook County and
oh yeah,
the forest preserves.
People who get their back up at the thought of eating insects, which I totally understand, I would remind them of that point I made a few minutes ago, that we all eat about 2 pounds of insects a year, and is not bad for us. I mean, I suppose it's obviously more desirable to get a bag of flour that doesn't have thousands of insect parts in it.
But, you already on Team Insect, even if you don't know it.
Yeah, we have been, and there's no evidence that it has done us any harm.
Again, we have had the pleasure of sitting down with author David Hammond and picked up on some new cicada recipes. Thank you so much for making time for CityCast Chicago.
Really fun chatting with you, Jacoby.
Before I let you go, for more news and events, head over to our website, chicago.citycast.fm. While you're there, check out us giving grades to the mayor for his first year in office. We've got a neighborhood guide from Calumet Heights, the neighborhood my mom calls home. And please subscribe to our daily newsletter, Hey Chicago, where we're going to send you all these things and more every morning, Monday through Friday, directly to your inbox. Did I mention that it's free? Of course, we can't get up out of here without some good news. Mayfest begins this Friday in Lincoln Park and runs through the weekend. In addition to 2 stages packed with music, great food all around, they're also hosting the Armitage Art Show, and they even got a little family carnival on site. Check our show notes for more information. As always, I appreciate you for listening and reading. For all the folks who stopped by, call and response books earlier this week and just let me know how much they enjoy the podcast. Thank you so much. Make sure you're back here bright and early tomorrow. We're going to talk to you then. Peace. Price check on aisle 10.